Yeah, Minister Randy Boissonnault, who we've been talking about for the last few days, is effectively going to step back from his cabinet duties. This is an announcement we just got a couple of minutes ago, right before I came onto the air to talk to you. It follows quite a few controversial headlines about the minister. He apologized just last Friday about false claims of indigeneity. He had, of course, previously said his grandmother was Cree. He'd also sat on the Liberal Indigenous caucus, though more recently he'd clarified that that was as an ally, not as someone who was Indigenous. And of course, the reason why all of that mattered was because he used to be involved in a company that had tried accessing government funds through a program that's meant for Indigenous-owned companies to get to that money, that allocation of funds, and so that had become controversial on its own. We've also learned that there have been a couple of arrests at that company involving cocaine, although Boissonnault has come forward and said, look, this has nothing to do with me. I don't know that person involved. And we also know that Edmonton police are investigating another matter at that company. So this was becoming, a bit of an issue for the Liberals, frankly. They've been spending most of this week answering questions about whether or not Mr. Boissonnault should continue serving in cabinet. He had said up to right now that he would continue to do so, but we now have the statement saying he is stepping away from those duties. Today was, of course, the weekly Liberal caucus meeting. I wouldn't be surprised if this came up inside the caucus meeting, and MPs may have had something to say about it.
Yeah, and Rafi, I know you haven't had a chance to look down at your computer because you're just reporting the news that we literally found out, seconds ago. And so there is the statement, and I can read it or you can read it, but it's that the Prime Minister and MP Randy Boissonnault have agreed that Mr. Boissonnault will step away from cabinet effective immediately. Mr. Boissonnault will focus on clearing the allegations made against him, and Minister Jeanette Petitpas-Taylor will temporarily assume the responsibility as Minister of Employment, Workforce Development and Official Languages. She's also the Veterans Affairs Minister as well. So, Rafi, this is a big moment. And we saw a question period yesterday. The Prime Minister wasn't there. The Prime Minister is there because he was in Rio for the G20, coming back. Prime Minister is there in question period today. But it was a raucous question period yesterday with the Conservatives calling for Randy Boissonnault to be kicked out of cabinet. And the NDP, at least one NDP MP, Blake Desjardins, also calling for Boissonnault to go.
You don't want to be Justin Trudeau in question period answering questions about why this minister won't step down, right? Like, you don't want those clips cut up on social media by the Conservatives. I suspect that that may have also had something to do with this decision. It's something the Liberals want to leave behind. This does effectively leave them with perhaps one more cabinet post to consider during an upcoming shuffle at some point in the near future, perhaps before we head into an election, as several ministers have announced they're not running again. This would complicate that matter, perhaps make it faster, perhaps prolong it, but it is an issue that I guess is maybe partly resolved for them, but not entirely.
And it was interesting, Rafi, to just kind of, watch cabinet ministers, the Prime Minister, over the last few days, couple of days, and some of the language that they were using in defense, could you call it lukewarm defense of Randy Boissonnault, and Patty Haidu in Indigenous Services was also asked about all of this. And it seemed that the ministers were sort of saying, well, he will continue to explain himself, or that kind of language, which didn't really come across, right, Rafi, as kind of a ringing endorsement.
Yeah, it's, things like it's up to him to explain himself, and, we'll take him at his word kind of thing. Nobody was saying, I am fully confident in the minister to stay in his position. Certainly the Prime Minister did not say that when he was asked while on that trip abroad about it, which then makes you think, okay, well, what's coming here? What's going to happen next? We did hear from a couple of Liberal MPs this morning on their way to the caucus meeting saying that Minister Boissonnault should stick around, and he has done a good job in his portfolio. Anthony Housefather noted that Minister Boissonnault stood up for the English-speaking minorities in Quebec over language restriction laws by the provincial government there, and that he should stick around. Other MPs have had similar thoughts, but overwhelmingly, you're right, the reaction has been it's up to him to explain himself. At one point, Patty Haidu yesterday even said it is unhelpful for reconciliation for people to say that they're Indigenous when they are not. I mean, that sort of speaks for itself too.